believer. Hey, I'm Nick Delgado for another edition of Taotaomona Tales on the KUAM Podcast Network. Joining us to tell their stories is Quintin Duenas here in Tiyan, and it's right in this Tiyan home. Kin says that this is where it all happened.
Yep.
How you doing?
Good, good.
All right, so started off, where do you want to begin?
Man, this happened a long time ago, probably a little over 10 years ago. My aunt was a Christian mother, and she was going around and telling my mom that, I should bring in that we should bring in the Lady of Fatima into the house. At the time, we didn't think anything of it, and, they brought her in, they did the whole novena for her, and we didn't think much of it until one day I was trying to come down our stairs, and I couldn't get off the stairs. On the last step, it's like a wall, and I just couldn't. My body couldn't get past it.
It was like a force field?
Like a force field, I guess you would say. Like, my mind's like, just go, but my body is like, you can't. And my mom would look at me, and she's telling me, Hafa Tsunomo, what's wrong with you? I said, I can't get down. And then she goes, Hafa, you can't get down. I said, Mom, I can't get down. And so she came to me and she pulled me off of the stairs. And then, after that, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just my mind, whatever. And then I remember another night I was sleeping, and then the next morning when I woke up, my dad said, you were yelling so loud. I said, I was yelling? He goes, yeah, you were on the baluster and you're yelling out, Dad, siki magi, tama magi sti tao. But my dad never really heard me speak Chamorro or like in my sleep before. And he goes, you were looking down the stairs. And I remember that night I had a dream that there was a shadowy figure that came up, and I was trying to wake my parents, who were in the next room, to get up. But my dad was telling me, he goes, you just stood there and you were yelling. But it was weird because nobody else heard me yelling. My mom didn't hear me. My younger brother didn't hear me. And then, I was like, oh, well, maybe I was just like sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And then the worst one right after that happened. And again,
Were you sleepwalking though?
Apparently I was, but I was able to walk straight back to my bed and go back to sleep as soon as he patted me on the side and he turned me around.
Any questions that you might have been possessed?
Possessed, Fanagui, I really don't know at the time. And we didn't really have any suspicions,
Yeah.
And then all I remember is that the statue was facing the stairs. And so I started thinking, like, man, no, it can't be the statue. And then another night, me and my brother, we were in our room, and I was trying really hard to fall asleep, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. So I closed my eyes, and every time I would close my eyes, I would see two figures outside of the window across the room from me. And so then I shook it off, and I said, okay, well, I'll try to fall asleep again. So I closed my eyes, but then those figures moved from outside the window to inside the room. And then I started to scare myself, and I said, no, something's wrong. And then I said, okay, well, maybe I'll just try to go to sleep again. Close my eyes. Then those figures ended up next to my bed. And as it was next to my bed, my body froze. And I was trying really hard to open my eyes, to move my body. My feet felt like they were on fire. Like I was being burned from my foot, and it was moving up towards my hips. And I kept yelling out, for help, but I couldn't open my mouth. Finally, I always kept a rosary next to my bed. So I somehow was able to grab the rosary, and as soon as I grabbed the rosary, I woke up, and I was able to run to my mom's room, and my feet were still burning, and I kept telling my mom, Mom, puti patasu, senengitsu. And then she was freaking out, so she grabbed some patma, she put it in a pan, she burned it, and then she was walking in my room. And I ended up sleeping on the floor next to them that night. And then I finally had a discussion with my mom, and I said, Mom, I think you need to take the Lady of Fatima out. And she said, but she's supposed to protect the house. I said, but she's hurting me. I said, I don't know what it is. I just feel it that she needs to be out of the house. It could have been that this place was very new. We just moved into the house a couple years before. But yeah, it was so real. And then after they removed the Lady of Fatima, they took her a little early, about 3 or 4 days early. Um, it stopped happening, and so I was telling my mom, I said, I don't think I don't think she wants to hang out with us anymore, Mom. And
Yeah.
she's like, she goes, well, you didn't feel anything after this? And no, I didn't. I could walk up and down the stairs. I didn't have the visions when I was sleeping. I wasn't sleepwalking anymore. So yeah, that's kind of how that whole thing happened.
It's always so bizarre because whenever we hear of Taotaomona, we think of like the jungle area or just
Mm-hmm.
some of the native ancestral lands that aren't inhabited. We don't have houses on.
Mm-hmm.
But this happened in your home, and then we also hear stories where they might even go into objects. In
Oh,
our
I've heard a lot
household.
of
And so,
stories of that, like
you
that.
think that was the case?
It could be. I had a cousin who would collect porcelain dolls,
Eef.
and he ended up getting really finagry, got sick, and then they had to burn all the porcelain dolls. So growing up, my parents hated any stuffed animal, dolls. They hated. So could you imagine having like your GI Joes and your parents like put that in a black trash bag, And but it is very possible, things that are of adornment, that are attachments, we hear about those a lot, and I kind of wasn't surprised, but I actually was more stunned that it was something that we were praying to, and it kind of hurt me. But I mean, I still go to church, I still sing in the church choir, I do the rosaries, and then I even do the family novena. So I don't know if it was just that one incident, but yeah.
How do you think your experiences and then also the stories that you've heard growing up here in Guam about the Taotaomona, about our ancestors, has that changed your beliefs in them over the years, and how so?
So, my grandmother's actually a Suruhana. So growing up, we heard all the stories, from the clearings in the jungle to the possession of dolls to lights in people's houses to people trying to get taken, and then the bird that tells on the pregnant girls and the cat that cries. I've heard a lot of it. Prospectively, I think that I always had a respect for Taotaomona, and I've always paid attention to our cultural beliefs. Things like putting up red curtains in your house, so that they don't come in or that they don't look into your house. Putting in cologne when you're going out, especially with the kids. Not doing your laundry late at night, kind of thing. So those things I still hold value to, and I still practice. It's that saying, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of a cure, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's more so you're saying out of the respect that you grew up in. This becomes part of our culture.
Yeah.
What about people on the outside, the skeptics? What would you say to them?
Unless you've seen it, a pretty good practice of mine is you always learn about the culture first, and then you respect that culture, because you don't want to be at the wrong end of that stick. And people that are skeptical, everyone's going to have their own beliefs, but in the end, I think it goes back to mutual respect of what the culture is, what it was before you were here. It's not something for people to make judgment based off what they seen on TV or
Right.
maybe read in a news article that may not have been true.
Right.
Prior to more people coming to Guam, they thought Chamorros were cannibals.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, it's having that firsthand experience and having that mutual respect to understand and make reason with what they believe in, that I think is the important message that needs to go across.
I think what's so also chilling for me is after hearing your stories that happened to you, you said about a decade ago,
Yeah.
you still live in this house.
Oh yeah, and that's why I'm saying it's like, you learn about that ounce of prevention, like stuff like putting salt. My grandma used to put salt in water in front of the doorway, and that was her form of prevention. Or the red curtains. A lot of people ask me, their kids get finagry, and I tell them, well, put them in a red shirt, or take your boyfriend or your brother's shirt and that's been used and put it by the window. I think it's the small things that don't get passed down that we forget, and people tend to forget how to remedy the small things.
Yeah, and I've heard that before. The male figurehead, the man of the house, kind of speaks up. They'll say, we're not here to disrespect. Leave us alone. This is my home.
Yeah. Or
We're
shouting
here now.
into the night. I remember elders are standing up at the outside and they're cussing into the jungle, right? And you're like, maybe he's crazy.
What's wrong with that guy? Yeah.
Yeah, but you realize it's actually
Yeah.
a preventative measure, and some people are scared to do those things, but it's this image of dominance that I live here now. I'm in this realm, and you were here before, and it's again that knowledge of what do you do that helps to prevent you from getting finagui. I mean, I teach in a middle school, prior to me going on orders, and kids left and right every year there's always like one or two that come to school and they have like they get finagui because they didn't put perfume on, or they go to a party late at night and then they come to school and something followed them, right? And as indigenous people of Guam, we're like, well, this is what you should do. But then you get the younger ones like, oh my God, I think you need to call the priest. Which is possible. You could,
Yeah.
But for a lot of it, it's something as simple as burning patma, or carrying the rosary, or putting perfume on, or even lotion, small stuff like that.
A few things, tips to just keep us safeguarded
Yeah.
and comfortable in our homes, because it's where we live.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people always tell me. That thing happened to you here. I'm like, yeah. I mean, the statue was right there. The stairs are right there.
Yeah.
I said, but for me, it was to understand. What were my limits as far as being exposed and appreciating and acknowledging. At the same time, that they're there, but at the same time, you also have to remember that you should not have to acknowledge them because you don't want them to like follow you and stuff like that. If a lot of like little kids, and they always go, oh, monster, you would tell them, oh, there's no monster over there.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a preventative measure, again, to make sure that you don't bring that into your everyday life. And again, like schools happens all the time.
And of course, not acknowledging them is one helpful method, but in the sense of like our younger generation being told, no, there's nothing there, just to your point of not acknowledging them, does that also bring about, I guess, a misconception that, no, you don't really see anything, so then they won't get to learn and grow from that?
Well, yeah, I think it gets mixed up.
Yeah.
There's a difference between turning attention away to protect, and then there's a perception where you totally disregard the existence because it doesn't match either your belief, your values, or what you were brought up knowing. Most people from off island, I guess, would say that houses or cemeteries were probably like the more prominent figures that you would see to be haunted.
Yeah.
But I mean, here it's like it's anywhere.
Anywhere.
Even
in Tumon.
Even in Tumon, yeah, especially in Tumon.
Okay, so no other stories or no other experiences? Any inklings or feelings that have happened to you in those years that passed, or late?
I did have one instance. I had a friend that used to work in the district court.
Okay.
And at one point, he showed me this picture, and he was telling me this story about how the district court doors shattered. And he goes, we couldn't figure it out. And then he shows me this picture, and I looked at the picture, and I said, who's the girl? And he goes, what girl? I was like, she's standing right there. He goes, no way. I said, no.
You could see the girl in this photo.
I could see the girl.
He couldn't. No one else could see it.
Apparently, no one that worked at the court could see it. And then I said, well, she looks mad. And he goes, there's only one other person that saw that girl. And I was like, well, who? He goes, the Suruhana they called. Or Suruhano, I think they called. And I said, well, whatever you guys did pissed her off because she's mad. And then he's like, no way. They always tell you like, oh, you must be Suruhano. I was never given that title. I don't actively practice. but it's just, there are people that are le'en, they can see. Then there's people that make amoy. There's people that lassa, massage other people. But I mean, that one instance, it came from his phone, and we were in the Army Reserves at the time, and he's like, no way. And I said, yeah, dude, she's like not that high. You can see it on the door, and she's just standing there where it's cracked, and he's like, man. Ooh. Yeah, he got fugu all over.
I'm feeling it right now.
Right? Now you don't want to go to the district court to report.
I have to, though.
I don't even know what door it is, though, but I just saw the door and I just saw the figure, but that's all it was, yeah.
Do you think that you having that eyesight, that you might be, you might have the so-called powers passed down, the gift, yeah?
My grandmother was a Suruhana, but in Talafofo, and she didn't want to pass the gift down. It
has to be passed down.
Yeah, so traditionally it would be passed down from the carrier to the person, and a lot of times, and the way I've heard it is that you sleep next to the suruhana. They ask permission for them to let you become the next suruhana, and my grandmother was scared of her gift, and it is scary when you see things that you don't understand, or you don't want or you see things that no one else can see, so she kind of let it die with her. Did it live in the generation? Maybe. We don't know. But what I do know is that I do respect the traditional beliefs of the Chamorros and the Taotaomona, and the things that we were taught from a young age. Even if I grew up, I'm already 32, but I can still, I still believe everything that is told to me, and how to prevent those things, because as you can tell, I still live in the same house, and
that's clear.
And so far nothing has bothered me since then.
Yeah. You claimed your domain.
Yeah. I didn't shout out the door yet, but but yes.
Do you think that you'll ever want to take on that gift, seeing as you already have this spiritual connection to our past?
I think it's a calling, and my calling was always like helping. Teaching is a form of helping, and I think that if people needed my help, that it would come to me. And sometimes they do. Some people will ask me to make like lodagal for them, and I have. People have needed to be massaged, and I have, just off of I just feel like an inkling, and then I just do it. But am I a suruhano? Not really. No, I don't claim the title. Do I practice? No. Do I get a feeling sometimes? Sometimes. But for me, I've learned from other suruhanas around the island. I've seen them practice. I've heard their stories, and I've seen how it's affected them. And for me, it's an honor to be one. It's an honor to practice, but it wasn't gifted to me, and the title wasn't gifted to me either.
Yeah.
So then I wouldn't hold claim to it. But if it's something that's traditional and it's in my being, I would practice it.
Well, you're only 32, still time to consider and think about
right?
it, I guess.
They don't give a degree for Suruhana.
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, Ken, thank you so much for your
No
time and
problem.
for sharing your
Thank you for
experiences.
coming.
Anything else that you think the viewing public should know whenever they hear about our Taotaomona?
Ask questions. I would think it's common to ask questions, but
not
listen.
To them, not if
not to them, but to the older generation, to the manamko.
Yeah.
You want to ask questions, and you want to get their insight, because they have the experience, they have the knowledge, and that's why that's why you fangingi the manamko, because you're taking in that knowledge, right? And it's from every word to every action, there is a purpose. And once you understand those things, culture becomes alive, especially for the younger generation.
Yeah.
And sige fan ko tusi funut sumoro sa malaka parikostobe mamia.
What does that mean?
Go and speak Chamorro, because it's good for our culture.
A lesson for us all, including myself. Thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate
problem.
you sharing your experience and your stories.
Of course.
Always ask permission.
Yes, always
right?
ask permission.
Whether you're
doesn't matter if it's English or Chamorro or
Yeah.
in your mind, just ask permission.
Real quick, what's the common way? What's the proper way?
So it depends what you're gonna do, but I mean, normally if I go into like the jungle, you say "Gwelet and gwelu, kusini befala kolongi halam tano."
Could you do part of it in English?
Gwelet and gwelu, may I please have permission to walk into the jungle?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you would ask, I'm not trying to bother you. Or if you're gonna use the restroom, may I use the restroom?
Yeah.
And if you ever need the restroom in my home, you are feel free to use it.
Okay.
Or like that's how I was taught.
Yeah,
So,
I do the same. I mean, I say the names and then I go into just asking in English because that's all I
Yeah.
know at this point.
I mean,
but-
if you'll know if you're not welcome.
Right.
I mean, people get fanatical like that all the time.
Yeah.
And so those are a lot of their stories, and but it's all just about mutual respect.
Of course.
There's energy all around us and in existence. If they acknowledge you, you should acknowledge them.
All right, that's clear. Thank you so much. And again, always ask permission. If you're not a believer, again, like Ken said, it's important that you respect them. For now, thank you guys so much for watching Taotaomona Tales, the podcast on the KUAM Podcast Network. I'm Nick Delgado. We'll see you soon.